Not all windows are created equal, especially in metal buildings.
Today, we're diving into single pane versus double pane windows and why the right choice could save you future headaches.
Welcome back, Pack. This is Advil and Jared from WolfSteel Buildings. And in this video, we're going to be talking about something that became a major issue, and that is windows. We're going to be talking about single pane versus double pane windows. Which one is best for your metal building?
And starting this month, June 1st, 2025, we recently only started offering our double pane windows. We no longer offer single pane as an option. Watch the whole video to find out why.
Alrighty, Pack. So you may have noticed that we're not recording at our usual spot, and that's in our headquarters in Fort Worth, Texas, with the badass neon sign. Here, we actually have a different scenery. We're here in Weatherford, Texas, at our fab shop.
We figured there's no better place to talk about single pane and double pane windows than at our, main fabrication location. That rhymed.
This video, we're gonna be talking about single pane versus double pane. What are the differences? What are the insulation differences? What is the frame different? Also, which one is better for preventing against the #1 enemy in construction, and that is water. So how do we prevent it? We're gonna do a leak test, and then ultimately, which one's probably the best one for your metal building. Alrighty, Pack. So this month, we're introducing a new trim system for our tubular metal buildings, okay? And this is for the windows, and this is a perfect video because we're gonna show you how this works, okay?
Yeah, so the whole purpose of this new trim system, it's really only on the top of the windows, and it's called the drip trim system. So you take your standard J trims on the bottom and on the sides, and you pretty much just hit it up until it hits the drip trim. This drip trim from there, it has a little bit of we call it a little gutter system.
It's like a little gutter system, okay? So basically, you can see how the water, it's got that little...
It's got a little dip in it. And that way, whenever the water is falling in from the panel into the trim, instead of running this way, it falls on the side. So
we're gonna do a test on how this works, okay? You can see the water. It's falling all the way out here, and it's not draining here again. The weakest point is right there. Again, at the end of the day, we're solving for the #1 enemy in a metal building, and that's definitely going to be water. Look at that. And that is the new trim system. We had been doing this for quite a bit for red iron buildings. Oh, again, we're always revamping industry standards. We're bringing this product or this new trim system to our tubular metal buildings. So that's another way that we are a little bit more unique. Again, little details, but that's what makes the difference. That's where quality is. Alrighty, so the very first question is, what are single pane windows? Right here we have a demonstration of a single pane window. This is actually the most common type of window that is offered in the tubular building industry and also in the shed business, okay? Like most industries, you basically all get similar materials from similar raw material providers. So essentially this is one of the most common, okay? So what is a single pane window? It's basically one pane window, so it's just one glass. We'll talk a little bit more of insulation and all that, but it's basically that. This one's made out of a aluminum frame. This one has the flush fin, so the fin is on the exterior, and we're going to talk about why that is important. Now we're going to be talking about double pane windows. Jared, what are double pane windows?
My favorite part. Double pane windows are a vinyl type of window. So the whole frame of it is made out of vinyl. It's got the nail fin a little, how would I say, offset, inset. It's around an inch. From there, as you can see, it has a double pane. So that means right on here, it's got one pane and then a separate pane on the inside. And in between those panes, it's got argon gas.
Or krypton gas.
Yeah, and that's kind of what helps it become a little bit more energy efficient. And we'll get into that in the installation portion of this.
That's so that's what a double pane window is. A little bit more sturdier, you could see, right? From a frame perspective.
Yeah, I mean, this one's 3 inches because it has to be able to, you know, hold the double pane.
Double pane.
And from there, that one's just 1.5 inches.
Okay. Okay.
A lot heavier too.
Now keep in mind that this is a double pane window. There are triple pane windows out there in the market. We don't precipitously offer them. This really a lot more for commercial public use. Like you can use bigger, more efficient windows. But right now what we're talking about specifically for metal buildings, double pane window versus a single pane window. All right, now let's get into insulation, okay? Let's start with single pane windows. So single pane windows, as I was mentioning, they're commonly used for like sheds, a lot for garages and for metal buildings. So they don't really meet codes, okay? Having said that, the reason is because again, it's one single pane, okay? So it's just one pane of glass. If it cracks, automatically you have a lot of air infiltration, okay? So there's definitely a lot of energy, you know, transfer from the exterior to the interior. But right now they don't meet any codes, so that's why these are not common in residential or commercial use.
I think piggybacking off of that, the way you also got to see it is if you got like an HVAC system or you got, let's say inside, right now it's super hot outside, right? You got an HVAC system running, you got something that's trying to keep the building inside cool, right? So on the inside, it's, you know, touching the glass, it's cool, but on the outside it's hot. All that heat transfer is simply going through.
It's just
You know what I mean? And it's just, it's kind of like that analogy that you said. It's like, not necessarily the exact same, but, you know, you're driving, you got your, you know, you're driving in your car, you got your AC on full blast, but you got your windows down.
And then also like if you're like walking by and the sun is hitting that window inside your building, you're definitely gonna feel that heat, like just walking by it. Just like roll-up doors, when they're not insulated. Now, let's get into the double pane windows and talk to me, Jared. Are these insulated?
Yeah, so the whole purpose of a double pane window is that you put two panes together. There usually is a little gap between them.
Yep.
Right? And in that gap, they trap argon gas, and that's what gives the double pane windows, you know, that U factor. You know, there's a bunch of ratings, like even on the inside, you could probably see here, it's got U factors, solar heat gain coefficient, all these extra ratings that I personally don't understand, but the energy specialists do.
Yep. Exactly.
You know, and that's really what, you know, they care about. That's their whole purpose.
And these are made to meet more residential codes and commercial codes because of those ratings that they're needed in order to meet the code, in order to even install these windows.
Especially if you're doing like a home, I know a lot of people that are like, oh, well, I need to make sure I meet this type of factor or rating or, you know, energy efficiency. So those are just kind of things to consider, but that's the beauty of the double pane window is, you know, it has that argon gas in between. It gives you a rating, it gives you a factor, and that's something you don't really get from the single pane. There are the triple panes and all that. But like you said, that's more for different
Higher levels of insulation, but
I would say also not all double panes are built the same. It's just something you got to look at when you're buying your windows, you know, the U factors, things like that. You know, you want to educate yourself a little bit on them.
Now let's keep in mind, guys, so if you're using it for a metal garage, metal workshop, you don't really have to meet code, okay? There's not a specific code, especially here in Texas. But if you have an insulated window, at least some sort of an insulated window, you're way better off than a non-insulated window if you're gonna be insulating your metal building, okay? We're gonna be talking more about that. Alrighty, guys, so the next section we're gonna be talking about is installation and drainage. So again, the number one enemy to construction really is water, but for a metal building is definitely water, at least from a builder perspective. That's the problem we're always bothered for, okay? So let's start with the single pane window. Right now, lately, I know it's been raining a lot. We're in June 20.
It rained like this, it rained
like this.
Never rains just straight down.
Definitely right now leaking, you know, managing leaking is extremely important, especially with rainy season, the way it rains in Texas, okay? So the single pane window has a fin that we call a flush fence, which is commonly used for like stucco, more like even shed, where you got the siding that can overlap and just go straight here. But that's not, I don't think it's suitable for ag panels and PVR panels and metal buildings. That's just my thought. I really don't think so. Jared, can you explain the reasons why?
Yeah, the reasons I don't personally like it is because we have to use a J trim, right? Head trim, J trim, there's a bunch of names for it. There's a bunch of different types. Quite preferably, we use just a J trim, and we'll talk about a head trim here in the next section. But pretty much, if your J trims for ag panel, we're using 1.25 inches, right? On our panel, it's a little different, but it sticks out 1.25 inches from this flush fin right here.
And the panel comes here.
Yeah, the panel comes here, and pretty much from there, you add a bit of silicone right here. It's important on the sides, but more than anything, it's important on the bottom.
On the bottom.
And the reason is because that J trim that sits like this, right up against the panel right here, right up against the J trim, it's catching water. It's just catching water. And if this J trim is at all angled in towards the window, all that water is simply going back inside. I mean, if it starts to overflow, it'll eventually, beat that little, slight decrease, but not too much. So just something to consider. That's personally why I don't like the single pane windows and J trimming them out. It can be a little bit of a challenge.
And here's another thing, guys. So metal naturally will expand and contract. Here in Texas, we get, it's cool in the mornings, and then it gets 100 degrees by midday, okay? All that is creating a natural phenomenon on metal, which is expansion and contraction. How Jared said, maybe when we install it, with the certain angle, to make sure that the water is draining the way. But after a year, after 6 months of just expanding and contraction, it starts moving, it starts shifting, it starts making movements. That caulks connection to the pan or to the trim, it's not gonna last long. It's not gonna last long. There's gonna be a lot of maintenance when it comes to that. And we tell you because we've gone through that. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that this one doesn't have a drainage system, right, Jared?
The single panes don't, the double panes do, but you're gonna have to stick around to find out.
Alrighty, now, Jared, let's get with installation and drainage system for double pane window. Talk to me.
Yeah, so the thing that I really like about the double pane windows is you can tell the difference between that single pane that had that flush fin versus this nail fin here,
which is an option.
It's an option. It's our preferred option. And that's when we're providing the windows, that's the one we make sure we always order. It's inset, I think about 1 inch.
Okay.
So what that allows us to do is when we sit our J trim, there's only I think around 1/4 inch sticking out. It doesn't, like I said, same thing. It doesn't make much of a difference up top and on the sides. It's mostly on the bottom.
Yep.
Right? Because it's only sticking out 1/4 inch. There's not catching that much water. It doesn't really give it the option to, slow back inward because the window itself is kind of helping mold the J trim. So it's a lot better. We still add silicone here just as a preventative measure, but your trim system isn't fully dependent on that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's basically flush instead of like the single pane window. Since it's got the flush fin, this is reset it all the way up behind the panel. Then you would have basically a trim like this, right?
Exactly.
So here's the catch.
Yeah, so this is if it was like a single pane window, it would stick out the whole J trim. Whereas you can see on here, it's pretty much almost flush.
It's flush. Beautiful. Now, Jared, talk to me about the drainage system.
Yeah, so if you look at your double pane windows on this is a lot smaller, right? But you can see 2 little weep holes there. And the whole purpose of that is any water that gets in the frame or anything, this whole window system has it to where all that water comes out through these weep holes.
Any water, especially since it rains here in Texas like this, some water can be caught right here. Any of the water that's trying to go back in here is raining really hard. It just starts all that water, there's a drainage system, or almost think of it like a gutter system, like a catch basin that's all behind, which is a really interesting technology that was developed for windows. Not all double pane windows have that, but the windows that we do get have this drainage system. Any water that falls behind it, it will go and drain through the weed holes.
Yeah, so think about it like this. The J-trim is simply there to catch water that's coming up top, coming off the sides, and keep it from getting in behind the sheet metal and the trim. But the window in itself has these weep holes, and it has its own drainage system for when it hits the window, especially right here on this bottom part. If you had like a fixed double pane window that doesn't open, then it would just kind of be the same. But on these, functional windows that open and close, any water that gets in here, right behind the frame, just drains out to those weep holes.
These windows actually have like caulk, you can see, to try to seal the gap. So, I mean, again, we're not saying that these aren't good windows. We're just saying that these are the challenges that we've gone through, and that stick around because we're going to be talking about what is our full opinion. But these windows, single panes, do not have a drainage system, especially here in Texas, that we get some crazy water problems. All right. So obviously, as Jared was mentioning, we have a unique installation system for windows. Okay, so we have like a little kick out over here where you're gonna see what we're trying to do is minimize the water that comes to this corner. All right, the B-rolls, you're seeing it. So it's basically a little kick out. That way the water is going out here and not close to the edge, which this is the main point where water leaks from a trim to metal perspective. Okay, and then here you can see that the trim, because this is a nail fin system, the trim is really flush to the frame, exterior frame of the window. Any other pointers?
No, I mean, you
Nice
kind of
and
covered
caulked.
it. Well, the biggest weakness of a window is always going to be at the bottom right here. Why? Gravity. Right? When water's hitting, especially if you do a 45 up top, all that water that hits from up top comes down and it goes in right there. So with this system, with this little kick out, all it does is it pretty much kicks the water out this way, keeping it away from the bottom corner.
You can see that all that water is draining here. Okay, out here. It's not coming in right here at the corner. Okay, now again, I don't have water. If I would splash it, the good thing is that this trim is flush to the frame. That's the advantage of a double pane, is that you have the ability to have this nail fin system that is hard to find on a single pane window. And having that allows your trim to be flush, and therefore any water that splash on it does not get trapped by the trim like that. So just draining like this, which we're going to be talking about our new trim system that started this month. Okay, so this is an old system which worked for a good time, and it still works actually, by the way. We just wanted to elevate. Again, that's our motto. We revamp industry standards, so we're always studying, we're testing, we're analyzing how do we improve, because there's always something to improve. So stick around to see what is WolfSteel's opinion on all this. Alrighty, next is let's talk about price and what our clients are saying. Okay, so let's start with price. And I'm definitely going to talk because I've been the one talking about single pane windows. Single pane windows, usually this type of window costs around, like, cost wise, it's like $80 to $90, maybe $70 to $100. That's a good range. The cost of the window. As far as when it comes down to what is being sold at in the marketplace, I know we were selling them for like $200 or $300, depending the size, little features. So in the marketplace, I know you can get them as low as $150 to $300 is a range that the industry, offers the single pane. And then again, that includes installation, that includes the trim, caulking, and the labor. So labor and materials. That's about, $150 to $300 in the marketplace. And I'll talk to you about the double pane windows. What is the price?
Yeah, so the double pane windows, they're running, it depends, at least to purchase they can range. They can range from like 150 to 250. Okay. It all depends. The thing with double pane windows is kind of like insulation now.
Yeah.
You know, there's fiberglass, spray foam. Not necessarily like that crazy of a difference, but, you know, different windows have different U factors, different, you know, operations, fixed windows, open, you know, or functional windows. There's so many different, you know, variables, but
Colors.
colors, exactly. Yeah. Colors add a lot. Yeah. So, you know, but anywhere you're looking to pay between, I'd like to say 150 to 250 for a basic white window. And then obviously if you add like a color to it, it can change. Or if you want something with a little bit of a higher U factor, all that kind of determines the price. Right now, I believe for just a double pane window installed, you know, you got your frame around, trimming, everything, you're probably looking at like 450, I think is more or less what, 450, 415, depending on the size.
So you're looking at a range around like say $350 to $600. Just depends the type, the size, the features you select. So you're looking at basically double or triple the cost of a single pane window. Now let's talk about what clients are saying. What are clients saying? I know, Jared, we've gone through experiences. So for example, you know, we do get a lot of clients that say that they are flimsy. You can feel it right here. So again, it's made cost effectively. It's made for sheds, for barns. You'll be using it for like a small little shed. You're not insulating your building. You really don't care. This is actually a good window. I think so, you know, because you're maximizing the value for what you want. Again, it's all about value and what matters to you. Now,
I think we have, like you said, we have had a lot of customers that, you know, they get the window installed and they were expecting one thing. You know, once you get it and you have it in front of you and you're using it, now they're, you know, that's kind of where you know, it's like, oh, I got, you know, an awesome building. I went vertical. I went this. You know, I got all the upgrades. I really should have upgraded that window, you know.
And that's the reason why we created this video, to really show you guys the detail, because a lot of times the focus is on the money, which I understand, because at the end of the day, like, I'm also a consumer. As a consumer, I'm also looking to make sure I'm getting, you know, a good price. As far as single pane windows, what we're trying to say here is that's what it is. At the end of the day, it is what it is. And then you're saying insulation. Once you insulate, especially with spray foam, fiberglass, you can swap out the windows. You can come back, boom. With spray foam insulation, it's basically attached and bonds to the whole framing system. You're seeing some of the B-roll of the back, how it will all bond. In order to swap a window, it's gonna cost quite a bit, because you're also gonna have to replace the spray foam. Okay, so just keep that in mind as something that, you know, you're gonna have to, that you're gonna encounter, and actually some of our clients have encountered right now.
It's a lot more labor intensive also, is the problem. So it's just something to think about. I also, you know, I'm a big visual learner, you know, so I know a lot of customers are, and sometimes at least they don't have the option to maybe go see one in person, or, you know, see those type of things, or kind of visualize exactly what they're going to get. And that was mainly the reason for the video.
And the clients that have gotten double pane windows definitely love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot sturdier of a window, especially the double, what is 3-inch. And I mean, just the strength and durability of it, it's a lot different. You know, like I said, we've had a lot of customers that say, oh, I got an awesome building, but I didn't like the windows, you know?
Yeah.
At least with their double pane windows, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
You know, I've never heard that. It's more of like, oh, I wish I would have gotten them, you know, colored or something like that. But, you know, as far as energy efficiency, they have said it you know, it makes a difference, right? They don't really feel anything, right?
And I think you brought up a great point. That's the whole point here, is what is not said, you know, and that goes out into everything. Like, what is not said, especially as you're shopping, what is really not said about the options that are being selected, and really what is needed to have a great experience specifically for you, depending the use of your building.
Yeah, I consider it as like, well, if we're getting a lot of feedback, you know, from customers that regret buying, you know, the single pane, or, you know, things like that, then it's like, okay, well, we don't hear that with the double pane.
So they're liking it.
So it's like, okay, well, that tells me something,
Pac, obviously we revamp industry standards. We're always trying to learn. We actually have a system now in place where we have a customer success team where we're asking our clients, for surveys where we ask them a little bit more. So maybe we should ask, hey, how are you liking specifically about your windows, So now we're going into what does WolfSteel think, okay? Alrighty, Pac, so let's be real now. What is our opinion? And let's start with Jared. Jared, talk to me. What is your opinion if you're speaking to a client and you're giving them advice? What would be your real opinion?
I think it's kind of like a toolbox. You got different tools, right, that you can use. And I think single pane has its purpose and its place, where if you're trying to do like a shed or just, like an outhouse or something where, you're not really going to be in it too much, or you don't really care if it's insulated or anything, it has its place. You know what I mean? But quite honestly, that's not really a lot of our projects. The majority of our projects are going with some type of insulation, be it a fiberglass or spray foam, and we're also dealing with some crazy Texas weather where, it's really, really hot inside. And if you're inside your metal building, all that heat transfer from the outside to the inside, it feels really bad.
Yep.
Right. So especially with the black color, that's, the black and white, that's, kind of being a little popular, with the double pane, that's, that's a little bit of a different story.
Yeah. So, and especially since we do a lot of spray foam, that's the reason why we don't offer single pane windows, because once we do the spray foam, if we have to come back and replace them or do any maintenance because it's leaking or anything like that, it costs a lot. It's a lot of labor. I know you've dealt with that. It's a lot of labor, and it takes certain skill set to actually work around it. So for that reason, we're like, nah, we're not gonna be dealing with that. We're just gonna offer double pane windows. Okay, so we're building to prevent problems, not to fix them. That's just how we do things. All right. Now, Pac, aside from that, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that this video really helped you guys understand a little bit more of different types of windows, how selecting the window is actually really important. I know your project might be worth, from like $20,000 up to $100,000. The windows are probably a small, but they are a big, important decision that has to be made and really has to be studied and understand. Okay. Other than that, Jared, do you have any final comments?
If you have a better way of sealing up windows or trimming, I'd love to hear about it in the comment section.
Perfect. So you're saying like without sealing or without caulk or what?
I've seen some Facebook people, commenting like, hey, there's you don't need to add silicone, the trim handles itself. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it.
Leave it in the comments, guys. Aside from that, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
What's up, Pac? Remember to stay up to date with everything that we're up to by checking out our social media. You can find us at WolfSteel Buildings for behind the scenes action. We share our latest projects, update on what the team is working on, and all the exciting progress happening in real time. Don't miss out on the action, and remember to give us a follow.